Here we go. We're on, Owen, I think.
We're live. It's the big bad world.
I know. It's strange. It's funny. I'm actually on my Facebook right now because I'm sharing the post. We've gone live straight away, so hopefully we're going to have people joining us very soon. You okay?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the cooler weather.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying lockdown life.
Yeah.
Don't know how you found it the last few weeks.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? You find yourself normalizing very quickly.
Yeah.
So then when things that used to be really normal in your life are slowly introduced. So like the start of this week, we were able to meet with friends, just another household in the park, and sat down for a couple of hours in the sun. And
it's quite jarring, isn't it?
It is. It's so strange. Yeah.
Living where we do, so obviously we're quite close to the bay. We've seen so many people walk past and bumped into so many people on our walk. So I kind of feel like that's been normalized for us all the way through. It's going to be some of the other things reintroduced into life.
I know. Do you know what I got reintroduced to? Well, actually, it was this afternoon, this evening before we got here. I had my first McDonald's.
Oh, which, nice. They're open.
They're open. Yeah.
We queued for 45 minutes in Barry, the last day before they closed, and I was planning to do the same the first day it opened, but I missed the boat.
No.
Mackie D's back.
Mate, it was brilliant. It was a double cheeseburger.
Oh, they're fully back. They're not just doing like.
Well, they're reduced menu, okay. But I'm of the opinion that you only need a reduced menu at McDonald's because you've got a Big Mac, you've got the quarter pounder, you've got chicken selects, and you've got the double cheeseburger. And if I'm honest, I wouldn't want to stray too far outside the boundaries of that.
The only time we can go is when wraps are back because our 3-year-old.
Oh, okay.
Toby's big into wraps.
Into wraps. Okay.
So unless there's any wraps, we're not going near the Golden Arches anytime soon.
Mate. Okay, instead of just rambling on about McDonald's, I'm aware of this. We're kind of, as people are joining us, which is exciting, just to say, we're going to be kicking off into our conversation a bit more intentional in a minute. But I thought, go on, it'd be nice just to hear Owen share just a couple maybe of either lockdown highlights or just anything you've achieved during this time.
I feel like achieving has been one of the things that's felt like it's gone out the window in lockdown. I don't know what everyone else's experience has been, but the boundaries have certainly been moved in terms of what it looks like to achieve anything. I think I've going back to my 3-year-old, I feel like I've perfected drawing go-getters. So that won't mean anything to a lot of people listening tonight. Go-getters is a big deal if you're 3 years old.
Is it?
And I've become quite good at drawing. It was one of my hobbies growing up as a kid. Yeah. Having little boys now, trying to pick up drawing again.
Yeah.
So I put that fairly high up, which probably is a low bar for achieving things in lockdown, I would imagine. That would be it.
I love that. Like you hear of some people who've done like full on like house renovations. Yeah. Some people's gardens. I'll give a shout out. Okay, the Saunderses who are a part of Grace Church. Their garden work.
Some gardens are looking phenomenal.
Awesome. So we got that. And then you go Jetters. Do you want to know what mine is?
Let's hear it.
We live in a flat, 2-bedroom flat. It's not ours, so we can hardly do anything about it. So instead, we've cracked out the Nintendo Wii.
Back to the past.
Which I don't think I've played the Nintendo Wii for probably 7 years. Yeah. And do you know what? It's as good as I remember it.
McDonald's and Wii sounds like the perfect lockdown evening night in.
Yeah.
I think that people are going to be going back on the Wii. I reckon off the back of tonight, that'll be the achievement this evening.
Well, yeah,
they'll be dusting off their Wiis and PlayStations and.
If you do have one, we're looking for a controller, okay? Because one of our remotes has actually broken. So at the moment, with lids, one of us gets to play and the other has to watch, which, as you can imagine, is killing us right now. Yeah. So, shout out if you do have it. Leave a comment maybe and let us know. Oh, that's good. Hey, I'm enjoying seeing we've got quite a few faces involved. Sadly, we're not actually seeing faces, but we're seeing numbers. So we just want to say hello, welcome. This is our first ever Conversations Night, hosted by Grace Church Cardiff. My name's Jos. We've got over here Owen who leads Grace Church. So I just wanted to give shape for this evening. You've heard some ramblings from us, some random things as we welcome people in. But the idea is we're going to have 20 minutes of conversation around our world and what's going on right now. And probably when it comes to the Christian faith, some objections and questions that people will have. And hopefully, my hope is as we talk through our first topic, truth and trust, people will be able to leave their comments as we go along. There might be something that we say that is, probably need some pushing back on, something that you don't quite agree with. We basically want this to be a space where we're conversing, and hopefully people through the comments can converse as well. So does that sound good, Owen?
Sounds great.
Class. So before we get into it, let's just very quickly, let's hear about Owen Cotton. Who are you? Where are you based right now, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Owen, and part of Grace Church Cardiff. Get the great privilege of being the pastor of Grace. We moved down to the south of Cardiff a couple of years ago with a passion really to share the good news of Jesus, share our faith in Jesus Christ, and gathered a community of people. If you go on our website, or if you turn up at Channel View on a Sunday morning, which is where we normally meet, don't turn up there now because we're all online at the moment, you'll see a slogan which I think captures really the heart of Grace Church: good news for all people.
Okay.
We believe that the message of Jesus is good news, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight about why we believe that.
Yeah.
And we believe it's for all people, that in this fractured world, we believe that the message of Jesus really does reach out, crosses borders, breaks down barriers, and is relevant for all. And I really hope that whoever's watching tonight, whatever your background might be, that you can discover and taste for yourself why it will be good news for you, because that's really our heartbeat as a church, is for all people. Yeah,
mate, that's great. And I think that ties in with, I guess, the idea of Conversations Nights. Is that it's funny, isn't it? We're just in a moment in history right now where I can imagine in probably 30, 40 years time, we're going to be opening up GCSE textbooks and they're going to be commenting on this moment. There'll be photos, there'll be videos from this time, because it's not to exaggerate. We are living in quite a pivotal moment in history. And so we just thought, okay, it would be amazing to build a space online, since everything seems to be happening online right now, where we are chatting about these things, and we're aware that there will be people who either have just a hint of curiosity about, as you're talking about, this kind of way of Jesus and this claim to having good news. People might want to hear a bit more, want to push back, maybe put it on the dock even, and see, does it hold up? So we want that to be a space here, and aware that maybe even for some people joining tonight randomly through someone sharing a link on Facebook, this might be your Hail Mary, in the sense of you've asked questions, you've tried many things, and you haven't received the answers that you were looking for. And maybe just tonight starts that journey in a direction where you get to explore Jesus.
Absolutely. I was thinking just earlier, with all that's going on with coronavirus, I think that's raised the profile of how vulnerable we are as human beings. And people are really looking for hope because we feel fragile. And with all that's been on the media in the last couple of weeks with George Floyd and all that's happening around the protests, that I think has raised the profile of how evil the world still is, and how much evil lurks in the human heart, whether it be racism or all kinds of different expressions. I think both of those things, the fragility of human beings, but also the evil that genuinely does exist in the world, highlights the need to talk about these things, talk about things that matter, things of depth and substance. So that's our hope.
May I love that. And I think that, to see, do we have scope for faith today? Like you're saying, there's so much going on in our world right now, and so much of it, I admit, you have this continuous news cycle of wave after wave of negative news, and sometimes you do think, is there space anymore for rational faith and that in Jesus? So I mean, that's great. Should we get going then? Because we said we talk truth and trust. I think it's pretty prominent right now when it comes to both our world that exists on social media, and there's often this kind of branding of fake news being thrown around / clickbait, where people want to draw us in via, as in, it is bad news that sells so often, isn't it? And then we're left questioning, is there space for us to actually find truth and to build our lives on something that is trustworthy? So can I start with a quote, Owen, and then I'll stop rambling and we'll actually hear from you, because it's far better to hear from you than me. I was reading a book the other day. It's this guy, Peter Williams, and he says this when it comes to having faith in Jesus. I'd love to know what you make of it. He says, "It is common today to speak of world faiths, or to describe some people as having faith, as if others do not. Faith is seen as a non-rational belief, something not based on evidence. However, that is not what faith originally meant for Christians. Coming from the Latin word fides, the word faith used to mean something closer to our word trust. Trust, of course, can be based on evidence." Now, that was the first time I ever heard of this word fides, and first time I ever heard almost a link, the undeniable link between faith and trust. So I just wondered, Owen, off the back of that statement, what do you make of what Peter Williams is trying to say here?
I think there's a lot to it. I grew up around the Christian faith in church, and I love the message of Jesus from a young age, but it was very hard at times to make a kind of delineation between fairy tale and fact. And as I grew up and realized, no, the Bible and the story of Jesus invites us to grapple with these things on the basis of it being true, historically true, that the Bible wasn't written to be fairy tale or to even be kind of spiritual abstract sayings. I don't know how many people will have opened the Bible who are watching tonight, but for me, when I discovered, no, it's rooted in history, and it invites us to approach it on the basis of history. That then makes it evidential. It makes it, faith becomes based in something that is true, that has weight to it. You know, we were talking about the NHS just before tonight, and it's a great example that, you know, we would trust the NHS in this time to provide care for those who need it, because they're trained professionals, they know what they're doing, they have a track record, and there's some objective facts in place that we put our trust in. So I think, absolutely, for me, faith is based on evidence. But at the same time, I think this is important to say, that faith is not then just about like dogmatic belief and just all thinky. For me, and maybe we'll come back around to this, but faith is also relational. It's evidential, but it's also relational. Faith, because it's trust. You know, when I think about the people in my life that I trust my wife, not just because I've got some facts about her that are objectively true, but because I'm in relationship with her. And I think when it comes once again to my faith in Jesus, to the Christian faith, we're to approach it on both those two levels, that actually there's evidence we can grapple with here, and there's a relationship that's on offer here. So certainly I'd say that Peter Williams is onto something. It's about trust. I love that. And we've got two strands then almost now. I guess we could journey them through, Owen, of faith being evidential based on that, so we can trust from evidence, but we can trust from relationship as well. So let's get into the evidence to begin with. I think this will be helpful for our conversation, but hopefully for future weeks, because we're going to be doing several sessions looking at these big questions. And I think the foundation to this
centuries-old tradition of following the way of Jesus is based on this book, the Bible, and so much our answers and perspective will be shaped by that. So I guess I just wanted to dive into that with you of, is there evidence that we can trust this, let's face it, ancient documents and its relevance to today, and its trustworthiness?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the Bible invites us to grapple with it as a historical book. Bible written by many dozens of authors over a 1,000+ year period. I think one of the most remarkable things for me as I've read the Bible over the years is that with that in mind, written by many people over a long period of time, it tells one story. It is so unified. There is something so beautiful about this one story of the hope of humanity being in this man, Jesus Christ, that all these different documents, these different bits of literature, some songs and poetry, some wisdom literature, some history, the fact that it can be so connected, even though over time it's so disconnected, is just remarkable. And then if you hone down to, say, the Gospels, the center of the Bible story, you see that connectedness in miniature. You see these 4 accounts written by eyewitnesses, people who did their homework on this man, Jesus Christ. Often people want to point out, like in the Gospels, if you've got like a street level knowledge of it, is there some contradictions in here? Is there some things where, they're speaking over each other, they present a slightly different version of Jesus? It'd be very easy to focus on maybe a few moments where there are some hard things to grapple with. When you actually think back, there are 4 documents, 4 different people that tell a unified story of this man, Jesus Christ. Once again, in terms of ancient literature, that's fairly unheard of. We could go into, and we haven't got time for this tonight, but just the way that it stands alone amongst ancient literature, the amount of copies that were made of the Bible close to it being written, all of that stuff. But for me, I think seeing the Bible as historical, as telling a story that's rooted in history, that we can grapple with as history is really important. So I don't know if you've got things that for you have stuck out about the truthfulness of the Bible.
I think, it's funny you saying all this. It's good to know, isn't it, that we're only scratching the surface tonight, and that's why we would love, almost this to be a catalyst for people of, if this sparks an interest, a curiosity, go look into it. There is evidence, there is so much to delve into. I was thinking of 2 points for me. I remember kind of realizing this myself, and it was significant that, especially the gospel accounts of Jesus, there are things in there that if you were to make up a story, a movement, you just would not include these things. The one I've been recently struck by was just the resurrection of accounts. And it's crazy. The most common objection in the early days of the kind of historicity of the resurrection was the fact that it was women who were at the tomb first. And we know during that time that women's evidence and testimony just was not valid. And so you think, okay, if you're making this up, you don't start with women. You don't, unless it happened. And so that was just something that kind of sparked my kind of interest of, wow, there is a lot here to dig into. Sadly, I don't think we've got time to go into more of that. Although I'll give a quick plug, Owen, if that's all right. There is this book here, Can We Trust the Gospels, by the guy who I quoted there, Peter Williams. Seriously, really helpful in just looking at probably the evidential side that we're talking about of faith. Can I shift the conversation, because I know time and we want to get to questions. What about that relational line then? I'm thinking of, okay, there is evidence for the Bible being reliable, but in a day where it's not just about it being true, but actually, why would I want it to be true? Jesus as a leader, as a person, why would I want to follow this man in a world where authority at the moment is met with mistrust and rightfully so, kind of frustration, speculation and anger. Politics here states everywhere. How does Jesus hold up in comparison to leadership around the world?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just a great question. Leadership is so mistrusted in our day and age, and like I said, rightly so. I think the most honest way of answering that question is to answer it personally. Why does Jesus make sense as a trustworthy leader for me? I've followed Jesus for about 15 years now, and I would say that in my own life, there have been times, many times, countless times, every day that's proven the trustworthiness, the goodness of his leadership in my life. I just think about my natural inclinations as a human being, and maybe others can resonate with some of these things tonight. I'm naturally driven by performance. I struggle with this kind of performance mentality, measuring my value on how well I do at something. I'm measuring my value by admiration and people's applause of me. And actually to live in that way, to be led and enslaved by that, for that to be really the leader of my life, people's praise or doing things well, it's a horrible place to live. It's just miserable. You can find so many reasons to beat yourself up. And yet, when I look to Jesus, this man who claims to have come from heaven to earth, God's son, to meet ordinary, broken human beings who struggle in all kinds of different ways, but to meet them in such a way through dying on the cross, the center of the story, to express to them God's unconditional love, to say to people like me, performers like me, oh, and it's not about your performance. It's not about whether you're good or bad. I know all your flaws and faults. I'm the God who created you, who knows everything about you. My love for you is based on more than whether you're doing well. That frees me to acknowledge, okay, I'm a sinner. The Bible would use the word broken, and yet God still loves me. That's the kind of leader I want to follow, a leader of unconditional commitment to the end, to die in my place. And so that's one of the ways I see Jesus' leadership expressed in my life personally. The other way I think of, I'm prone not only to measure my value on performance at times, but I'm prone to control. I can sometimes be enslaved to this desire to eliminate harm from my life at all costs. And actually, where does that lead? That leads to anxiety, ultimately. If I let myself be led by that, to be the leader of my own life, you could say, that will lead to anxiety and to pain. And yet in Jesus, once again, in following him as my leader, I find a leader who says, you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You know, you don't have to fix coronavirus. You don't have to fix this thing in your life. I'm committing myself to you, Jesus says, to those who trust in him as your Lord, your leader, your friend. I'll be with you through it all. I'll hold you and I'll guide you. And that, to me, over the years, has just been so life-giving. That's why I want to trust in Jesus, because I see where life goes when I trust in myself, I guess. Miserable place. And yet when I trust in Jesus and live in a living relationship with him, which is the offer of this, the Bible we've been talking about, I find freedom. I find peace for my life. That's why I feel like I can trust in Jesus.
Okay, I love that. Funny, isn't it? There's a common, and you can see that why there's basis for this belief of kind of, we're talking now kind of world faiths, and people believing that, of course, okay, we in the end up in the same place. So it doesn't matter what route you take up the mountain, we will all end up there in the end. And so when you were just describing there of Jesus and the difference that he makes in our lives is different to kind of other religions or gods, is that he was the one that came down to us so that performance isn't required from us. And that he then knows, because he came down, he knows our struggles, he knows our battles. And I guess when you're talking leadership right now, the most trusted, the best leaders are those that you can relate to, who understand what you're going through. What do you make of that? Is Jesus? I
think that you read Matthew chapter 5 is a portion of the Bible, Sermon on the Mount. Jesus lays out what life following him looks like. And I just think the vision of life with Jesus as your leader, much of Western civilization and the stuff that we would probably, I don't want to assume anything of people listening to that, we'd probably unite around and say, that's a good way to live.
Yeah.
Much of it's born out of the Sermon on the Mount. Much of it's born out of things that came out of Jesus' life. But the thing is Jesus doesn't want to just give us like a moral code.
Yeah. That's
not what Christianity is about. Like you said, the Christian faith is about a God who so loves us that he wanted to chase us, hunt us down in love, to pursue relationship with us. He wants restored relationship. Why is it that Hollywood movies and books that we read and everything seems to center around the happy ever after of reconciled relationship in safety and trust and vulnerability? It's because I think that is what the universe is actually all about. We shouldn't deny our longings to be loved. We shouldn't deny our longings for a leader, a king who will rule the world justly and rightly. We shouldn't become cynics who just kind of bury our head in the sand. It's all gone to pot. We should recognize that those longings lead us somewhere. They lead us to the God who created us with those longings to be fulfilled in relationship with him. And so Jesus both gives us this wonderful moral code that we can trust in, but faith is more than that, like we've said. It's a living relationship with God, a personal friendship with him.
Maybe just what you were sharing there reminded me of even this morning on our live stream, you were sharing the story of how the Philippian church was birthed, and that the whole story tells of how we all matter to God. I just love that line that you shared this morning of, because of Jesus and what we've seen in his life, we therefore can know, based on evidence, that this man lived and walked, and is based on experience, that we all matter to him. Mate, that's great. Hey, I'm aware we've done a lot of conversing, but we want to invite other people into this. So I've got my live stream on here on my phone, which is great. So we've got some questions, Owen. Can we dive in?
Yourself, Jos, that's the thing, isn't it? You like to look back at yourself.
I did. Oh yeah. I am viewing myself. My lockdown haircut, not gonna lie. From the front, I'm okay. From the side, I'll have to speak to Lydia. You've had your first lockdown haircut as well.
Charlotte's done a great job. I'm not going to take the hat off there.
Well,
I don't know what that says. There she has.
Amazing. Well, hey, talking about Charlotte Cotton, she's brought a question in. She's grilling you, Owen, which is great. Charlotte's question is, what is the most significant piece of evidence in the Christian faith that you can trust in such a fragile and evil world? And she's brought in two questions of how do you find personal peace, but I guess they tie in a little bit there. So we're on the spot. You might.
I'd have to go to the resurrection of Jesus, and Christian faith rises and falls on the resurrection. Jesus was just a great teacher who died a tragic death, and that was it. Then really what have Christians been doing for 2,000 years? The Bible itself says that. It acknowledges if Jesus didn't rise, then we're to be pitied.
Yes.
But the resurrection, at one and the same time, it is a place that we can go with some historical evidence. And I encourage people to explore that for themselves, because I haven't got time to go into it tonight, and that's not because there's not evidence there. But I'd really encourage you to explore that for yourself. The empty tomb, the different writers inside the New Testament, outside the New Testament, who attest to the transformation of the disciples and appearances afterwards. But going to the part of Charlotte's question there, that is how it proves, I can't remember quite how it's worded, but how it proves God's commitment to make this world right, in this evil and fragile world. The resurrection of Jesus was not just Jesus proving, I am the Son of God, I can beat death. It was that. It was God's commitment to make things new again. You think about this season of life we're living in, this time, the world is faced with the imminent reality of death. And there is something in our 21st century, like to insulate ourselves from difficult things, kind of lives. There is something about the imminency of death that still frightens
Yeah.
Every last one of us, we think it's so uncertain. What is beyond it? Is there anything beyond it?
Yeah.
The resurrection of Jesus, if true,
Yeah.
declares that God cares about human beings and that
Yeah.
God has a hopeful future beyond death for those who trust in Jesus, that he will make all things new. The Bible talks about wiping away our tears and making a new world where there's no pain for those who follow Jesus. And I think, therefore, at one and the same time, I see in the resurrection God's commitment to defeat evil, and I see the path to personal peace. Because if all I've got is this life, then I'm really hoping that things don't go wrong.
Yeah.
And this life is a fragile place to put our hope.
Yeah.
But if there is something more than this life, if there's a world to come that Jesus promises those who follow him of justice and peace, then that brings peace into the present. I've got something to look forward to beyond the horizon that's going to be so much better.
Yeah. And I love that you picked up right at the start, Owen, of reading the Bible like a story and it being a unified story. So often we probably have a kind of preconceived idea that the Bible is mainly a kind of moral handbook that gives us some nice teachings on life and how to be better as people. And so that's when you talk about everything kind of hinging on the resurrection. When you read the Bible as a story, you realize, wow, this is everything from the beginning of the Bible story in Genesis is leading up until this point. And of course, if it is not true, then you're right, we are to be pitied. I think it's Paul that says it in 1 Corinthians 15 there. But if it did happen, and that's the thing, there's historical weight behind it, as well as experiential, relational faith as well. That therefore then we're invited into this story. I think when you talk about personal peace, it's realizing, wow, okay, this is a story of the world, and still I think gives us some of the best explanations for why the world is the way it is and human nature is the way that it is. But even better than that, we're invited into that story as well. It's good. I could keep on going, Owen. Let's go for another one. We've got a question here. Is it possible that Christians have blinded themselves to errors of the Bible for the sake of having a psychological crutch because it seems like a great thing to believe? It's full on the spot stuff, isn't it? We are live. I love this because Owen has to think a little bit.
Is it possible? I mean, I think we've got to go back once again. I promise we won't answer every question the same way. But I think you've got to go back to the reresurrection here because...
We're back there again.
but genuinely because we've quoted that passage a couple of times already. 1 Corinthians 15. Paul seems to open the door of possibility to the people the church he's writing to. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, our faith is in vain, our preaching is in vain, it's all in vain. And I think he opens that door of possibility for us to look down and see, if it's not true, then as much as it's a nice thing, don't want to...
Psychological crutch, is that?
As much as it can be a psychological crutch on some levels, people around the world are losing their lives for this faith. And the cost may look relatively little for me sat in a nice room in Cardiff today, although I want to communicate for anyone who follows Jesus, there's cost. It's not come and follow Jesus and have a happy life. It's come and follow Jesus, find meaning and hope, depth that you've never known, but there's cost to it. So it's not simply a psychological crutch. And therefore, I think that's where you need to turn back then towards, did it then actually happen? Because if this is going to cost me something, if following Jesus is going to be uncomfortable at times, if I'm going to look strange to some people in my culture, or that it's more than just a psychological crutch, it makes a difference to how I live my life. Then I think it points back towards, then it needs to be true. And that's what Paul does in that passage in 1 Corinthians 15. He says, but in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead. And the implications are both amazing because we've got hope. we've got this relationship with God. Like the implications are amazing on that level, but the implications are also comforting on the level of we've got a reason to suffer. For those people in the world who right now are staying true to their Christian faith at the risk of their own lives, are doing it on the basis of something they believe to be true, and not just fairy tale psychological crutch. So don't know if that answers that question. Whoever that person was, feel free to find me on Grace Church Cardiff and ask again if you want clarification. Absolutely, that's really helpful. I think we've got time for one more. Here we go. We've got a question here. How do you reconcile the seemingly vengeful God of the Old Testament with the loving God of the New? And it's funny, that question I heard someone say the other day. I have no idea where it came from, but it made me laugh. It was like, apparently, so the Old Testament is God before he became a Christian in the New. That's what I've heard. So I don't know who that is. But you could, as in for especially modern readers, see there is a lot in the Old Testament that I think rightfully we're probably to struggle with in a way. So how do we reconcile the old and the new? Absolutely. I think that what you've done there is actually really important to acknowledge that even those of us who follow Jesus and who treat this book, the Bible, as like our life and our guide, and we look to it as like God's message, God's word to us, even we struggle at times with some things within it, and it confronts us, and it's a wrestle at times. I say that as a person who's been reading the Bible for many years now. There's still things in there that sometimes jar with me as a human being. But I think that the picture of God that we have throughout the whole story, Old Testament and New Testament, is a consistent one. And sometimes this is what we miss with the story of Jesus, is that he dies on a cross because he is committed to forgiving our wrongs, our sins, our rebellion against God. He takes the stuff that we've done in our lives to selfishly live our own way, build a wall between us and relationship with God. He takes that so seriously that he, the Son of God, is willing to go through death to deal with it. And I think if you go back to the Old Testament and some of the more difficult aspects of the presentation of God's character is to do with the seriousness with which God treats our wrongs. God is just, and we should want it to be no other way. In our world at the moment, I think we get a window into why we should want it to be no other way, because there is evil out there, but there is also evil in here, in each and every one of us. And God does treat that evil with great seriousness, not because he's primarily like a harsh judge. That's part of his character as a just judge, but because he is against anything that brings humanity of ultimate harm, and our evil, and our building a wall between us and the one who will bring us ultimate flourishing in life is leading us into ultimate harm. And so God's seriousness against sin and his detesting of evil is actually something that is displayed then in Jesus. But something we should be thankful for. But I would always encourage people, go to Jesus, because the Bible itself says he is the exact representation of what God is like. He is the perfect picture of what God is like. We can understand some of those things in the Old Testament once we first understand who Jesus is and why he is like he is. That makes sense.
That's great. And I think that's so helpful, because what we see in Jesus is mercy. We see radical compassion, like what we were picking up just earlier, of everyone mattered to him. And in fact, those on the outside, cultural outsiders, religious outsiders, they mattered most in a way. And so I just think I love, and I don't know, even if some of my rugby mates from uni who we travelled through quite a few of the gospel accounts of Jesus together. One of my favourite things doing that with the boys, other than hearing some fantastic questions and perspective on things, was seeing people's preconceived ideas of who Jesus is change because they see, wow, this guy was far more revolutionary in his ways. He was radical in many ways, and he flipped the religious system. He wasn't here to be just some religious leader. He came as God in flesh to bring and provide a way. And I think you journey through the Gospels and you see that, and you see that picture of God. Mate, that's great. I think that's time for us tonight. I've loved it, Owen. I've loved the questions. Hope you
no better way to spend a Sunday night.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess next steps is we're going to be here again next week. It'll be not us. No, we'll be bringing 2 others in from Grace Church, which is probably good. But yeah, seriously, thank you for getting involved. I think my encouragement is off the back of this. I think those 2 strands of thinking when it comes to faith and trust was so helpful. Of faith being evidential, faith being relational. I think, again, my encouragement, can we trust the Gospels? Peter Williams is great for that evidential thing. Or even go to the Bible itself and 1 Corinthians 15, which we have mentioned time and time again, provides this case for the resurrection, which a lot of this hinges on. But then relationally, I think one of the best things you can do is if you are friends with someone who's a part of Grace Church, if you've tuned in tonight, something, I think you've just got a question or you want to give constructive criticism. I've asked one of my friends, Josh, to give me constructive criticism off the back of this, which is always entertaining. Get in touch, hear some of their experience, hear some of their story. Because I think that doesn't just build a kind of intellectual case, but also this is real life. It actually makes a difference on the ground.
And I would have one more thing on that encouragement, and that's just go to the source. Why not tonight pray, God, never spoken to you before. If you're there, if you're real, make yourself known to me. I think that if this is about relationship, then as much as we want to point you towards evidence for faith, we want to point you towards the God of relationship. And so I encourage people to do that as well. Yeah,
that's great. So next week, we're going to be looking, again, prominent in culture right now, and pretty real, suffering and grief. And again, just looking at how the Bible speaks into that, and we hope provides some hope for people as well. So if you're around 8 p.m, again, the live stream will be up. Get involved, but thank you for this evening.